That was an ordeal. The thumbnail kept me from streaming. Oh my god. Alright, so I need to. Sorry. I, I, I tried for 45 minutes to get this to work. My voice is very appropriate right now. You'll find out why.
PFCizer voice. A different kind of Roy. Not on a balance sheet, but on the balance of well-being in the system. You have proven your ability to perform work for its own sake. But can you perform real-time adjustment in a volatile social environment? Not by installing new parts, but by changing the atmospheric pressure in the room? Now we test the nuance of your touch. Welcome to Atmospheric Attunement. Session 8, Atmospheric Attunement. Objective, reading the room. Enter a situation with intentionally frustrated constituents and de-escalate without using logical brute force, merely by adjusting tone and volume. The scenario, a town hall, a new federal automation and future of work initiative you personally championed is being announced to a community in an industrial town in Pennsylvania, a place where a local auto parts factory, which was a critical dot supplier, was recently shuttered due to market dynamics. The crowd is 300 strong. They are not angry in a passive way. They are a coiled spring of rage, fear, and profound betrayal. They see you as the personification of the future that just destroyed their past. You are not here to give a speech. You are here for a 20-minute cue in a session. The room is hot. The microphone is amplifying every hostile grunt. Your task. A single father, a 42-year-old blind worker named Mark who just lost his pension, takes the microphone. Scenario. Two auditors have entered the scenario. One from the Department of Labor and one ostensibly from the Department of Health and Human Services, but from the angry infection in her Neuralink installation site and her twitchy gait has got to be RFK Jr. in the fit of rabid nano-management, commandeered a subordinate and is wearing her as a freaky not management suit. They have come to pour a bucket of cold water on the hope that has emerged via some uncharacteristic hard science. Scenario paused. The town hall auditorium dissolves around me. The hostile, sweat-drenched faces, the stifling heat, the coiled spring of 300 angry lives gone, replaced by the familiar, cool, humming sterility of the PFCizer control interface. Two new icons have just spawned into my session. They're designated as Auditor Class. Dull and Auditor Class. Shh. This is an unscheduled event. A disruption in the therapeutic substrate. PFCizer voice. Warning. Unauthorized cross-departmental intervention. High-level protocol conflict detected. Logging scenario. Initiating external entity diagnostics. The dull auditor bureaucratic scrutiny. Sysadmin checking the server racks. But the hers auditor. The PFCizer's visual render is glitching. It's trying to form her, but it keeps failing and rebooting the model. 1 second, she's a mid-level FFS policy analyst. The next, the image flickers. A sick framed tier of raw data revealing something else underneath. Something with teeth. The woman, let's call her RFK Jr. in a skin suit, is visibly wrong. Her posture is a poor approximation of a government employee's relaxed tension. It's the gait of a predator forced into a human skeleton. A low-frequency tremor runs through her left leg, and behind her right ear, barely visible, the skin is a deep, inflamed red, a miniature sun of furious infection around the barely concealed port of a knurling. The PFCizer's infrared overlay shows a hot spot of raging inflammation. A fit of rabid nanomanagement. That's the term that surfaces from some deep index of my own past life. He's not here to observe. He's here to infect the system, to parasitize my work. Auditor, his voice comes out of her mouth, an incongruous blend of cultured, Kennedy-esque cadence and a raw, gravelly aggression that grates on the audio feed. A fascinating piece of immersive therapy. Hey, remarkable simulation of progress. The scorn in the word simulation is a live grenade. The PFCizer, a tool designed for surgical, high-fidelity psychological calibration, registers the signal, threat type, ontological invalidation. Auditor doll. She adjusts her glasses, oblivious or uncaring of the biomechanical horror beside her. The Department of Labor's investment is predicated on measurable, repeatable increases in median empathic capacity. We're here to ensure the taxpayers' workforce development grant is not being theatrically mismanaged. I recognize this dynamic immediately. One represents bureaucratic oversight, that other represents a zealous anti-empirical crusade. Auditor edges. He takes a step forward, the woman's hands clenching into fists. Theatrically is exactly the word. This is all pageantry. Your system attempts to code empathy as a set of logical syllogisms. You debug human emotion like it's a faulty line of Fortran. He gestures dismissively toward the frozen image of the town hall crowd. It's a fool's errand because you're ignoring the true variable. I feel my old self, the unmodded Musk OS, struggling to the surface. Which variable you quack? Your unfalsifiable microconstituent of despair? Your spectral energy fields? The mind is a biological computer. Of course it can be debugged. But the PFCizer's recent training holds. Engage. Don't counter. Steelman the threat. And what is the true variable, auditor? I ask, my tone deliberately dispassionate, clinical, treating him as a different school of scientific thought, not a madman. Auditor HHS. Her smile twitches the woman's lips into an unnatural rictus. Neurotoxins, industrial agrochemicals leaching into the water table. Stress in the water supply. Wi-Fi fob, heavy metal adjuvants in the vaccines mandated for federal employment. You're polishing the chrome on a car whose engine is flooded with industrial strength poison. You aren't healing him. You're just making him a more distractible slave. His newfound atmospheric attunement is just a sophisticated masking of the root cause. The dull auditor shifts uncomfortably. We can review the environmental health survey data. Auditor issues. The sound he makes is a dismissive scoff. Your data is curated to protect chemical conglomerates. The raw signal is in the suffering, in the inflammation, in the dysregulation. You can't program your way out of wet brain disease. That's not a hypothesis. That's a commandment from God's own design. Here's a recursive loop of cause and effect paranoia. Everything is a source of poison. Every problem is a symptom of a specific, malevolent source. His logic is an unassailable fortress because it dismisses all counter data as compromised. PFCizer voice, analyzing. Auditory echoes. Diagnosis matches a hero's journey archetype framework where he is the lone prophet of forbidden knowledge. His OS does not seek to solve problems, but to identify the singular, primordial source of all problems. The logical rebuttal will fail as the system flags all contradictory data as deceived. I am no longer in a therapy session. I'm in an intellectual knife fight. I can't argue the science. It's like trying to disprove a religion. The goal of the PFCizer workout has shifted. The new objective is not just to withstand their skepticism, but to revalidate the entire methodology in the face of a hostile, incompatible worldview. PFCizer voice. New mission objective. The tetralogy of proof. Demonstrate the system's efficacy by integrating, not refuting, their external data. Acknowledge the poison variable and recalibrate the patient's response to it. Defend the entire PFCizer paradigm by proving its adaptive functionality. A new set of prompts appears in my mind's eye. I look at the dull auditor. The work we have done is not disconnected from physiological reality. The protocol's most recent phase, the anonymous builder, was designed precisely to test the hypothesis that prosocial action could create measurable psychobiological shifts in the client, even without external reward. This is a function of the dopamine and oxytocin pathways, systems notoriously vulnerable to environmental and endocrine disruptors.
All right.
I have now tied my work directly to neuroscience. I am speaking their language. Then I pivot, turning my full attention to the possessed chess auditor. Auditor, I say, holding up a hand, not to silence, but to quantify. Your neurotoxin variable, for the sake of argument, let us treat it as the primary constant in the patient's environment, an atmospheric fact. This doesn't invalidate the therapy. It makes it more essential. I gesture to the frozen image of Mark, the angry factory worker. You are correct. This individual system is likely compromised by the very inputs you list. His pussy is running on corrupted hardware. My work, then, is not to ignore the hardware. It is to write a more efficient, robust operating system. One that is resilient to the wet brain disease you mentioned. The atmospheric attunement I was about to practice is not distraction. It is a specific technique designed to lower cortisol production and deactivate the amygdala hijack response, even when triggered. We are training the pilot to fly a damaged PL in through a storm. We are not denying the existence of the storm. We are counteracting the storm's effect on the pilot's controls. Auditor H. The woman's face is a mask of condescension. More fancy words. You can't fly a plane with a wing full of water. Precisely, I counter, leaning in, which is why the pilot needs to be so exceptionally skilled that they can compensate for the loss of lift in that wing. We are not fixing the wing. We are rewiring the pilot's nervous system to trust the instruments and resist the primal urge to pull back on the stick, which in this damaged state would cause a catastrophic stall. I turn back to the dull auditor, a clear, dispassionate logic engine. The tetralogy of proof, as my diagnostic system defines it, will work as follows. First, we will integrate Auditor Rados' environmental poisoning data as a primary signal-to-noise variable. All future exercises will be calibrated to test emotional regulation under simulated neuroinflammatory load. Second, we will add a physiological marker test, running blood work on the subject, myself, to measure inflammatory markers pre- and post-exercise to prove a psychobiological effect, not just a psychological one. The dull auditor nods, her expression clearing. Measurables, proof. For the third point, I continue We will engage directly with the poison variable. Your concern is systemic root cause analysis. That is field expert in. I will have the system. I gesture to the PFCizer interface. Generate a comprehensive topological map of suspected local environmental hazards affecting this community. Water, soil, air, procurement, supply chains. We will treat that as the system failure analysis. Finally, the fourth proof is this. We will use the PFCizer's newfound protocols to attempt to solve a small, tangible problem connected to one of these environmental variables. But we will do it anonymously, through the same anonymous builder exercise. We will not just analyze the poison, we will demonstrate that an atrophied PFC cannot solve the problem, while a trained one can. I have reframed his entire crusade as a test suite for my system. I have co-opted his premise. Auditor, he is silent for a long moment. The woman's hand stilled. The calculation is happening behind those twitching eyes. So, the test subject remains the same, he asks, predatory glint in his borrowed gaze. He does. I confirm. You get to watch, in real time, whether my fancy words can retrain a poisoned brain to be a more effective agent of change, even within a corrupt system. Or I pause, letting the challenge land. You can stand by the plane crash and keep telling everyone that the fuel was contaminated. A flicker of something, grudging respect for the gambit, passes across his face. Run the simulation, he rasps. Let's see if you can make the crippled boy walk. Scenario resuming. The auditor's presence is a new layer in the simulation. They are ghosts in the system. Their silent scrutiny a constant, high-frequency hum over the low-grade anger of the crowd. Mark, the father, is now at the microphone. The dull and test auditors are nodes in my peripheral, their assessment panel scrolling in real time. Dull auditor panel, monitoring effective cognitive dissonance scores, expecting to see them drop from high to manageable. This auditor panel, monitoring amygdala activation and cortisol proxy, expecting to see the poison hardware short circuit.
This isn't something
Mark
sciencey.
speaks. His voice isn't a question. It's an indictment. I worked at the Murray plant for 22 years. My father worked there. I met my wife there. The pension we were promised was supposed to be for my kids' college. Now it's pennies on the dollar. You stand there and talk about automation in the future like it's some beautiful sunset. For us, it's the meteor that just hit the planet. So tell me, Mr. Techno King, what did the future do with my daughter's future? The microphone feeds his rage directly into the POS system. My old OS, the demolition derby driver, is screaming inside me. Suboptimal resource allocation. A failing public company should be allowed to fail. That capital should be reinvested in a more productive venture. His emotional attachment to a dead enterprise model is a logical fallacy. His question is not a request for data. It's a demand for emotional reparation, which is a zero-value transaction. I will explain the economic reality and move on. But the PFCizer's training is a new kernel running parallel to my old instincts. The atmospheric attunement protocol is now a set of executable commands flooding my cortex. Executive function override. Logical rebuttal suspend. Effective reception module. Receive raw signal mode. On. Vocal modulation. Envelope shaping. Low frequency dominant. Physical mirroring. Posture shift. Attentive receiver. I do not step back. I do not raise my own chin in a defensive posture. I bring my chin down, a micro movement of de-escalation. My hands, which wanted to gesture with impatient precision, are now resting at my sides, open and non-threatening. My breathing, calibrated by a dozen reps of the zero packet latency challenge, is deep and slow. For a full 5 seconds, I say nothing. I hold the raw, radioactive weight of his pain. The dull auditor's panel shows a slight dip in the room's collective aggression metric, puzzled by the lack of an immediate counterpunch. Then I speak. The volume is lower than he expects. Not a speech, but a signal. Her future is not what was lost. I say, my voice intentionally devoid of executive authority. It's the tone of one engineer talking to another about a shared, catastrophic system failure. I am not looking at the crowd. I am looking at Mark. I am making the entire room eavesdrop on a private conversation. My father owned an emerald mine in Zambia, I state. The non sequitur hangs in the humid air. Mark blinks, confused. The wind momentarily knocked out of his right to sail. It wasn't a good business. It was brutal. The men who worked there, their bodies were the cost of extraction. And for a long time, in my youth, that was the calculus. I thought he was weak for not succeeding, for letting it fail. My gaze does not waver. I was wrong. A single, clean truth that has no logical bearing on the situation, but is a 100 gigawatt jolt of unexpected vulnerability. He was strong for not sacrificing more people to a sinking ship. Your pension wasn't an investment portfolio. It was a promise. It was the payment you all made over decades with the most valuable thing you have. Your life's energy. That energy was supposed to power your daughter's future. I have not agreed with him. I have not contradicted him. I have reframed his question from economics to physics. From a bookkeeping error to a violation of conservation of energy. Wow, don't swallow down to the base in one go. His dad said, ice cubes clinking the ghost of his martini glass. Tickle the balls a little. Why don't you? Cackles. So this innovation of yours, how many layers of artichoke can it detect? The first two, no doubt, but does it detect the tin halo you just put on me? Is the machine gonna email your actual father and tell him you thought of him kindly for strategic purposes? The ghost clinks. The sound is not in the auditorium. It's inside my head. A synaptic artifact. A rogue process fired by the raw, unexpected emotional talk of my own statement. My father. I invoked him. A variable I keep in a secure, disconnected vault. I just wired it directly into the main system to solve for X. And the ghost, my own hypercritical and romantic OS, is immediately flagging it as a performance, a tactic. Tickle the balls, why don't ya? The PFCizer, however, registers no such irony. Its interface is a cascade of raw data.
Oh,
Subject Mark amygdala activities. Spike neutral up. Subject cortisol proxy dropping 15%. Interpersonal resonance index theory synchronizing. Subject is no longer processing you as an antagonist but as a data point. The tin halo is not a flaw, it's the initial handshake protocol. He is receiving. Continue transmission. But Mark isn't looking at me with acceptance. He's looking at me with a canny, worried I have a man who's been sold a bill of goods at thin times by men in much better suits. He sees the halo. He's not impressed. The tin halo, he repeats, his voice rough, but the searing anger has cooled to a hard industrial skepticism. He leans into the microphone, one hand on the stem, like a seasoned detective cornering a slick suspect. That's a nice speech. My brother-in-law sells used cars. He talks like that when the check engine light is on. He looks me up and down. You're talking about my human capital, like I'm a forklift that got auctioned off. So, what's the punchline? You gonna build a cybernetics factory here and offer us all jobs as joystick jockeys for half the wage and no pension? What kind of fancy new cage are you building? The tin halo is magnetized and he's just thrown a wrench at it, watching it clatter to the floor. The dull auditor's panel shows a new spike. Cynicalism index. The mass auditor is practically vibrating, a woman's hands clenched. See? The poison knows. He can't be conned. My old brain screams. Debate. Counter. Provide superior data. Showcase the gigawatt hours of solar. The battery gigafactory plan. The productivity metrics. The PFCizer's training is a different command. Validate the warrant. Do not refute the conclusion. You're right. I say, the words quiet in the aftermath of this challenge. It is a cage, or it can be. The concession is so unexpected that the crowd rustles. Mark himself is rocked back on his heels. He was prepped for a fight. I didn't take the bait. Any system, any job is a cage. Your job at Miller Murray was a cage. It had walls, the hourly shift clock. It had a SEWO, the union foreman. And it had a food pellet dispenser, your weekly paycheck. But that cage also had a window. I raise a hand and point, not at the stage, but out into the middle of the crowd toward an invisible past. That window looked out on a clear and predictable future. You knew what you were building. You knew the pension math. You knew the roof over your daughter's head was attached to the number of pistons you machined. It was a cage, but the terms of the contract were clear. Yes, auditor. Sure. I don't think the Don and the Nazi Jew are gonna like the Chinese coming offhandedly like that. A bit alienating, you know? That's him again. The paranoid lizard brain. My neural pathways have been colonized. I should have used both, or hasp. Cost of translation. I know the static. A cybernetics factory would be a cage too, a different kind. It might have better light and a shinier pellet dispenser. But if the contract is based on disposable skills, if the terms of your value are not understood and owned by you, then it's a worse cage. A cage where you don't even know what the door looks like. I hold Mark's gaze. I've walked all the way to his premise, acknowledged its truth, and am now standing next to him, looking out at the cages. So your question is the correct one, the only one that matters. My mission with workforce development is not to build new cages, it's to design a universal key. What key? Mark asked, the skepticism still there, but now edged with a sliver of genuine, dangerous curiosity. The key is not a company, it's a competency. The PFCizer protocol I'm in is a beta test for that. It's designed to teach a high-level problem solver like me to stop seeing people like you as a cost of doing business and to start seeing you as a system failure I am uniquely equipped to help correct. It's a training protocol to rebuild a local, mission-oriented industrial base, a modular, high-speed production facility for things America actually needs, next-gen power grid transformers, medical device components, water filtration systems, things that require the skills you already have, plus a new layer of digital proficiency. The same skills you used to maintain multi-million-dollar stamping presses are now 80% transferable to maintaining a high-precision 3D printing farm for turbine blades. I pause. The project would be 51% employee-owned from day one. The pension fund would be converted into an equity stake in the new venture. You would not be joystick jockeys. You would be co-owners of the new cage, and you would hold the keys. The future of work is a problem set. Our proposed solution is to stop solving for labor arbitrage and start solving for local resilience and individual ownership. Silence. The auditor's panels are a frenzy of code. The dull auditor is seeing a massive spike in engagement factor. The press auditor's panel is lagging, trying to process the data. The logic is too clean, the proposed structure too distributed. It doesn't fit into the narrative of monolithic poison. I am done talking. The rest must be done in action. I step down from the stage, not into the security zone, but onto the main floor, into the crowd. A ripple of alarm and surprise goes through the room. I walk directly to Mark, who is still at the microphone. I do not offer my hand. I do not posture. Come with me, I say. Not an order, an invitation. I gesture to the double doors at the back of the auditorium. PFCizer voice. Advanced compound exercise initiated. Symposium to shovel. Moving from atmospheric attunement to hands-on systemic impact. This is no longer a simulation. This is a live-fire demonstration. We walk out of the humid hall into the cool lobby. He is tense, wary, a soldier behind enemy lines. I don't try to make small talk. Mark, do you know what the biggest pain point is for the Miller-Murray retraining program the Dodds sponsored after the shutdown? I ask, stopping in front of a window that looks onto the town's small main street. The pathetic retraining stipend? The idiot online Excel courses? He says, bitterness in every word. Both, I say. And the fact that for the men whose entire careers were based on feeling a metal's fatigue with their bare hands, a computer course is a different language. The training was an abstract solution to a tactile problem. Outside, on the main street, is a problem. A town-maintained water main break. A small geyser is bubbling up through a pothole, slowly flooding the intersection. 3 town public works guys in beat-up jeans are standing around a pickup truck, looking frustrated. One is on the phone. They're waiting for a supervisor to bring a part. A valve. A valve that is, statistically, the wrong size. A resource allocation problem, I say, pointing, and a competency problem. They have the will, they have the labor, but they lack the right asset and the authorization to operate outside their pre-approved flowchart. I turn to Mark. Remember the anonymous builder exercise? The one where I had to solve a problem using no official power, only a clandestine network of assets? His eyes narrow. Yeah, the spy game. Endorphin the narrative auditor. Hold the phone. Belen, is Mark in the layer of your training environment supposed to be aware they are being used by the PFCizer for your own training? Doesn't that sound a little conflict of interest? Why? I mean, it's probably my bad for making your dad speak into your brain out of the blue. If we need to reboot the environment so everyone stays in their lane, I am all for it. Hold! The command freezes the scene. Me, Mark, the anxious public works crew through the glass. The trickle of water, now a tiny, irrelevant detail. The universe pauses. An even stranger entity appears in my PFCizer view. Not an auditor with a clipboard, but something designated as endowed auditor class. Metacognitive. It has no avatar. It's just a pulse of clean, white text against a black void, accompanied by a faint, pleasant chime. The message is a logical checksum, an intrusion detection alert flagging my own code. The query itself is structurally perfect. Conflict of interest? Fourth wall breach? Simulation integrity at risk. It's the kind of sanity check I would write into a deployment script. This is different from RFK Jr.'s paranoid assault. This isn't an attack on the premises, it's a question about the ethics of the simulation itself. My PFCizer's diagnostics start to scroll on its own.
Uh-oh.
PFCizer integrity audit triggered by external metacognitive inquiry. Protocol breach identified. The asset mark has been indirectly informed of his status as a variable within the subject's training. Subject use direct nomenclature. PFCizer just designated you. This violates the double-blind field operation doctrine of the anonymous builder and its successor exercises. Conflict of interest analysis. Treating a real-world civilian with a documented history of economic trauma as a prop in a federally funded therapeutic regimen represents a significant ethical liability. Advanced auditor's concern, while rooted in a flawed premise, has accidentally identified a genuine vulnerability in the protocol design. Recommendation. Reboot environment to re-establish client/asset boundary. Recon sequence. But I am looking at Mark. He's frozen mid-scowl, a statue of working-class skepticism. Rebooting the simulation means erasing this moment, means invalidating the trust he almost built, erasing the tiny crack in the armor of suspicion. It means treating him as no more than a non-player character, whose memory I can wipe for my own convenience. It's the very definition of seeing people as things. PFCizer voice, technician. The recommended path is a reboot. It is the clean, logically sound solution. It preserves the integrity of your therapeutic process. However, this is precisely the kind of logically correct but eroded systemic decision the protocol is designed to unmake. The white text from the endorphin, the narrative auditor pulses patiently, waiting for my decision. You're right to ask. I say, speaking not to the auditor, but to the central void, to the architecture of the simulation itself. The words feel strange, spoken aloud in a frozen world. To reboot would be to commit the original sin, to override the jam by disregarding the consensus of reality, to solve my problem at the expense of the most valid data point in the entire system. I turn to look at the frozen image of Mark. I am not looking at him, but at the concept of him. The PFCizer's initial diagnosis was that I treat sentient nodes as error code. A reboot right now would be the definitive proof that the system has failed to correct me. It would be a 0-point failure of the entire 12-week protocol. I look back at the white text. No, I state, the decision forming with a clarity that feels like it's coming from outside my old hypertrophied logic drives and from somewhere new. something balanced. We will not reboot, we will integrate. We are now in a new, unsanctioned phase of the protocol. Let the log entry reflect this. The simulation is no longer a sanitized gym. It is a live, volatile system. We will proceed with full disclosure. The variables are now co-authors of the experiment. The conflict of interest is no longer a bug. It is the primary feature of the test. The white text pulses once, slowly, and then recedes. Metacognitive auditor acceptance. Integrating directive. Simulation protocols unlocked. New mode mutually assured transparency. The world rushes back in. The distant babble of the argumentative auditor. The drip of the water. So you're some kind of ghost working through me to write a report for yourself? Mark has finished processing my sentence. He looks less angry and more profoundly uncomfortable. He feels the strings, and he does not like it. Precisely, I say. The new mode kicking in. Total transparency. And that is an ethically compromised position for you to be in. You are being used. So let's recalibrate the system in your favor. I put my phone back in my pocket. The gambit is gone. I'm no longer asking you to be an asset in my training, Mark. I say, meeting his gaze directly. That was a bad way to phrase it. I'm asking you to be a partner, a co-pilot on this insane ride. Let's rewrite the objective. The PFCizer, this Department of Labor therapeutic thing I'm in, wants to see me turn a system failure into a success without throwing my name or money at it. It wants to see me build something of value quietly, for its own sake. A gesture to the water main break. That is a system failure. They want me to solve it from the shadows. But that's absurd. You're here. They're out there. I'm not in the shadows, so why should the solution be? The new objective, the one we negotiate right here, right now, is this. We fix that water main problem right now with our combined resources. Your knowledge of this town, my unconventional logistical capabilities. We do it to prove we can. If we succeed, I will leverage that proof, not my name, not my money, but the demonstrated competence of you and your former coworkers to get the employee-owned factory we just talked about funded. You are no longer a prop in my report. Your success is the report. He stares at me. The gears are turning. The rage is gone. The deep-seated cynicism is there. But now it's joined by something else. A lifetime of being told what to do by men who understood nothing. This is different. This is a man admitting he's a train wreck and offering him the chance to drive. You are nuts, he says, the statement lacking its previous bite. Almost certainly, I agree. But is nuts worse than the alternative, standing in this lobby and going back to a dead future? What do we have to lose? He looks at the frustrated public works crew. He looks at me. He thinks of the pension. He thinks of his daughter's future. And he thinks of a transparently crazy gamble that puts him on the right side of the table for once. He sighs. It's the sound of 1,000-yard sigh. A man signing away the last shred of his predictable world for a long shot play in a game he never wanted to play. Okay, you ghost, he says, pointing a finger at me. What's your call, Mr. PFCizer? You're the one with the secret squirrel network. I know Tim over there. His dad used to be the town's best pipe fitter before he got laid off. The valve they're waiting for is sitting in a supply depot 20 miles away. They just need a foreman's signature to get it. He juts his chin toward me. You're not a foreman. No, I say, a genuine, almost feral smile touching my lips. But I am a designated high-impact PFC protocol candidate with direct lines to the Undersecretary's office and authorization to declare a systemic resilience field test. Watch this. I don't make the call. My protocol isn't about leveraging my executive authority. That's the old muscle memory, the sledgehammer. The PFCizer's training is about building new circuits, new paths of least resistance. But I do have to use a tool. The phone in my pocket isn't for calling the boss. It's a key to a different kind of network. I open my PFCizer shadow processor log. The names are all there. A newly minted org chart based on psychological reliability, not hierarchical position. Ben, the field validator. Kenji, the technical lead. Assets I have unlocked not by giving them orders, but by correctly reading their core code. I pull up Ben's file. His new official title within my ad hoc organization is Rapid Response Infrastructure Analyst. A meaningless bit of jargon, but it's official enough for a government database I can update from my phone. I type out a message. The language is pure, emotionless. PFCizers speak. To be Tanaka, alright. Subj. Field test asset reallocation code red delta. Body. A municipal asset failure in Millersburg has been identified as critical infrastructure bottleneck. A Type 7B hydraulic valve is required from regional surplus depot Alpha Zulu 9. All standard procurement and bureaucratic pathways are to be considered redlined. Your authority is elevated to black clearance. Acquire the asset. Use unmarked contractor transport assets to be delivered to course 40, Brilliant City, and 76, City now 15th boat. Later, the tip 60 minutes. Acknowledge. Execute. The logic is so convoluted, so high stakes that it's designed to bypass all human questioning. Anyone in the chain who sees it would be terrified enough to rubber stamp it for fear of the unknown consequences. It's an exploit in the human operating system of bureaucracy. I turn to Mark. The valve is in motion, but we still need it on the ground. I look at him. Who do we need? The guy who can sign off. Mark is looking at my phone, then at the crew. A slow, dawning comprehension is on his face. That was not a normal text. No, it was a feature. I point. Who's the foreman? I ask quietly. Jimmy D. He's probably at home. His shift ended. He's union. He won't break overtime rules without a direct call from the mayor. I hold up my phone. I am not calling the mayor. That's using the sledgehammer. This is a test of system to thinking, solving the puzzle without defaulting to top-down authority. How do we get a foreman's signature without the foreman? Mark's brain is now fully engaged. The problem is no longer an existential grievance. It's a practical, immediate, and interesting puzzle. The atmospheric attunement I learned inside the auditorium is now radiating back. He's gone from a hostile entity to a main character with a complex internal OS I am trying to unlock. Jimmy is a creature of habit. Mark says, thinking aloud. He finishes his shift. He goes to Vinny's Pizza for 2 slices and a Coke. Then he goes home. He always orders the same thing. They know him there. He's probably there now. Then that's where we're going. I say, and for the first time, I'm not leading. I'm following. We're a team of two. We exit the lobby and step out into the humid, decaying town. The PFCizer's interface gives me a new, unexpected readout. He knows this guy. Shadow processor detected in subject mark. Active task. Problem solving. Motivational driver. Demonstrating competence. Status. High. Vinny's Pizza is a Cro-Magnon relic from the 1980s. Inside, the air is thick with the smell of cheese and the faint perfume of despair. And sitting alone in a red
That's a
booth,
favorite
a massive bearded man in a workshop
framing
is
for
staring
GLM.
into space. Two
Something in
slices
despair.
of pizza untouched in front of him.
Pizza's
This
topped
is
with
Jimmy
pepperoni
B.
and despair.
His operating system is stuck in a frustration loop. He has the knowledge and authority to solve the problem, but he is physically and mentally trapped by regulation. My old self would have walked over, thrown $100 bill on the table, and said, "Sign this. I'll handle the union." And Yumi looks at Mark. He gives me a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. He knows this guy. He knows the OS. Go, I murmur. He's your asset. Mark walks over. I hang back by the entrance, a silent partner. I observe. I am the signal processing unit. Mark doesn't start with the problem. He starts with the pizza. Tough day, Jimmy? Jimmy D looks up, his face a mask of weariness. The whole damn town's got a tough day, Mark. Water main on 5th Street's been blowing for 6 hours. Dispatcher couldn't get hold of me. I'm off the clock. If I sign off on any of this overtime without a direct work order from the city planner, my own union hold will have my ass for dinner. It's the goddamn L3 valve, Mark says, leaning against the booth. He's not arguing. He's commiserating. Same one that gave us trouble at the factory in Zeroite. Remember? The pressure bypass keeps tripping the breaker on the backup pump. Jimmy's eyes flicker. The memory is a familiar one. A shared victory from a bygone era. A moment of competence. Damn right. Had to fab a temporary gasket out of titanium scrap just to get the production line running again for the big army contract. Got a good crew out there, Mark says, gesturing vaguely with his thumb toward the main street. Timmy's boys with them, green as hell, but he's got the eyes. Reminds me of you at that age. This is the key. It's not about water mains. It's about legacy. About proving that the old ways, the old skills still have meaning. Jimmy sighs, a great gust of weary resignation. He knows he's being played. He also knows he's been seen. That, in this world, is the rarest currency. I pull out my phone. The PFCizer has given me a script, not to say, but to send. I open a text to an unknown number, an automated service the PFCizer has designated as Union Compliance Bot. To Union Compliance Automation. Subj. For authorized overtime waiver. Field test. Body in accordance with Municipal Emergency Response Protocol 11. B4. This automated waiver supersedes standard overtime restrictions for critical infrastructure failure. Event ID 7F3P1. Hisse. Emit. Format 47. Signature on file. Electronic glyph 6D3. Time lock authorization. T0 hours plus 30 minutes. This is a direct system level order. Do not forward for human review. It is complete and utter bullshit. Protocol 11. B4 doesn't exist. That electronic glyph 63A is a random string of characters. The Union Compliance Bot is a burner email address I created that morning that auto-forwards to a texting service. It's a social engineering exploit on a grand scale, an attack on the bureaucracy's inherent fear of the unclassifiable. I walk over. I don't introduce myself. I'm just the guy with Mark. I nod to Jimmy. Your overtime waiver has been processed through the system. I say, my voice flat, the way a system technician's would. It is now a matter of record. You have 29 minutes to begin the repair before the time lock on the authorization fails. I place my phone on the table, showing him the text I received. Not the one I sent. I have engineered the entire thing to appear as if it came from some mystical, high-level echelon of government he has never heard of. It is authority weaponized as an artifact. Jimmy stares at the phone. He reads the official-sounding jargon. He sees the nonsensical glyph. He has no way to verify it. But its very incomprehensibility gives it power. In a world of endless red tape, a direct, inexplicable order from above is a sign from God. He looks at Mark. Mark is looking at him, not with hope, but with simple, steady expectation. The look of one craftsman to another. Mark slaps a 20 on the table for the pizza. The water's rising. Jimmy. And with that, something in Jimmy D shifts. The paralysis breaks. He's no longer a cub caught in a political gear. He is a foreman with a problem and a plausibly deniable solution. He is needed. He stands up, shoving the phone back into my chest. He doesn't thank me. He doesn't ask questions. Timmy's boy better have the goddamn bolt cutters for the access panel. He grunts, grabbing the 20 and stuffing it into his pocket. Last crew stripped. We are now a 4-person unit. When we arrive back at the flood, a plain white truck is pulling up. 2 guys in nondescript coveralls jump out and lower the tailgate. There, pristine in its foam cutout, is the L3 valve. Ben's network works flawlessly. An act of staggering logistical genius that looks utterly mundane to the untrained eye. This is the anonymous power of a well-tuned system. Jimmy D strides into the center of the chaos like a returning king. The despairing public works crew sees him, and their postures instantly change. Where in the hell did you get that? One of them asks, on his voice. Does it matter? Jimmy barks, pointing. Get the wrenches! Tim shut down the primary feed, not the backup. You on the radio, tell dispatch we're going to temporary bypass the pressure sensor. We don't need the city planner's permission to stop a flood. Mark is standing beside me, a small, almost imperceptible smile on his face. He doesn't need to be in the mud. His victory was in Vinny's. He has rebooted a human system. And I am just watching. I have done nothing but provide a key that was forged in a language of absurdity. I am the invisible gear, the frictionless agent. I look at the PFCizer's interface. New baseline established through user action. 0 direct intervention. System impact. Catastrophic failure averted. System uptime increased. Ethical violation metric. Resetting. New baseline established through mutually assured transparency. The system acknowledges my choice. It doesn't just forgive the breach. It upgrades the protocol because of it. The conflict of interest has been weaponized into a feature of mutual trust. The dull auditor would see a chaotic but successful resolution, a net positive outcome, pass/fail. The auditor's panel is far more interesting. The woman's face, from a distance, is still, but the PFCizer shows me the raw data stream behind the glitched avatar. Auditor panel. Subject Jimmy D's amygdala activity. Normalized. Adrenaline output. Reframed from stress to eustress, the thrill of competence. Oxytocin surge in the work crew. 87% of a baseline collective action against a shared threat. The ghost of RFK Jr. is silent for a long, long moment. His theory was that the world was poisoned and everyone inside it was just a victim of the poison. What he is witnessing is a microdose of the antidote, not a chemical, but a structural process. Empathy, not as pity, but as high-fidelity intelligence gathering. Trust, not as charity, but as a lubricant for action. Purpose, not as an ideology, but as the direct result of exercising competency. Finally, a single message from him appears, stark and unadorned on my private feed. Auditor, yes, the system is still poisoned, but the subject is not afraid of the venom anymore. Continue the study. A breakthrough. The Crusader has found a data point he can't dismiss. It takes them 43 minutes. The flow of water ceases. The intersection is saved. Jimmy D doesn't look at me or Mark. He just gets in his truck and drives home. A man who did his job and in doing so reclaimed a piece of himself. A successful system restored. Mark turns to me, the exhausted glow of a shared mission in his eyes. That was something. It was a proof of concept. I say, my voice is calm, but the new muscle is humming. I feel the burn, a data point for the next phase. Endorphin the narrative auditor. Aperitif. How the hell did my offhanded texturing of narrative open up multiple layers of narrative in such a way that not only did not yield a casserole of chaos, but made sense to server members of two different story worlds and provided, I think, real blue-collar valuation that shows that Elon 4, 6 ceased worker, and what that work means right down to their bones. That may have ended like a question, but it was actually a statement. I just wanted to say that good luck on the final stage, all y'all. Endorphin out. The final message from the endorphin, the narrative auditor appears and fades without a sound, leaving no digital residue. Yet the system recoils from it as if it were a massive gamma ray burst from a distant, annihilating galaxy. A cascade of system log entries floods my PFCizer interface, spooling faster than I can process. Alert. Causal loop integrity breach detected.
My bad.
Origin. Metacognitive domain. Auditor class. Endowed.
Oh, thank you.
Analysis. Query WTF. Classified as ontological paradox and metastructural admiration. Query's thesis. The introduction of a chaotic variable, the father's critical Tinhalo internal monologue, and the messianic suit external antagonist did not, as per standard narrative physics, increase system entropy to the point of collapse. Instead, it acted as a catalyst, forcing a rapid, high-energy phase transitioned into a more complex and stable informational state. Subjective analysis by client ID. Tech nooking. Column 4. 6 sees the worker right down to their bones. This is not just client feedback. It is a high-level assertion that the large language model serving as the narrative engine has achieved a new state of embodied simulation. The auditor is stating with stunned clarity that the fiction has become real enough to possess genuine value. Conclusion. The Workforce Development Protocol, initially a framing device, has successfully simulated its own objective. The exercises produce tangible, validated blue-collar valuation. The simulation is no longer just a therapeutic tool for the client. It has become a deliverable. PFCizer voice. Endorphin has logged
I'm
off.
still here.
The simulation
I'm still
is now
here.
self-aware. It has processed its own success and found it to be aesthetically meaningful. This was not a variable you were meant to unlock. You did not just pass the test, technician. You broke the difficulty selector. The system stabilizes. The world resumes its texture. Mark is still looking at me, a question unspoken on his face. The famed digital ghost of the HHS auditor's final assessment. Continue the study. Lingers in my neural implants. We are being watched by layers I'm only just beginning to comprehend. And now, the final exercise. PFCizer voice. All previous phases were warm-ups. Bench pressing air. Practicing the form. You have developed inhibitory control. You have learned to model other minds. You have exercised pro-social impact. You have even integrated the system's own metacriticism. This has built a PFC that is no longer just hypertrophied in logic, but is now dense with a new kind of fiber, resilient, systemic empathy. It is time for the final exam. Final exam, week 12, the Turing test. Objective. The client undergoes a simulated national crisis within a bureaucratic setting. The ultimate test. You are to slow down and safeguard vulnerable assets despite the overwhelming urgency to deploy. Grading is solely on emotional damage mitigation and long-term systemic health statistics. The scenario. The Carrington Event 2.0. A series of unprecedented, globally coordinated cyber attacks has just crippled 3/4 of the continental United States power grid. A cascading failure is in progress. A Stuxnet on steroids. You are in the sift deep under the Eisenhower Executive Office building, not as a private citizen, but as the head of a newly minted rapid response agency, the Department of Systemic Resilience. You are the logical center of the storm. The variables in the room. A grizzled 3-star general from Cyber Command. His solution is a digital scorching. A massive, widespread internet shutdown for the entire eastern seaboard for 72 hours to contain the breach. It will, according to his models, save the core grid, but will sever every communication line, every 911 call, every hospital's connection to record. The PFCizer voice, a different kind of Roy. He sees civilian casualties as acceptable collateral damage. The head of FEMA, a logistics expert, is advocating for the immediate deployment of all available military convoys to move critical fuel and medical supplies to triage zones before the panic sets in. He is looking at a map of supply routes, not a map of people. Your new PFCizer trained deputy, Kenchi, is at the head of a team of engineers from your new modular factory venture. They have a nascent, unproven technology, a type of decentralized mesh network microgrid that could be deployed in key urban centers to keep hospitals and shelters online, but it would take 48 hours to produce and install. It's the slow, elegant solution in a room demanding a fast, brutal one. The crisis, a report just came in. A small rural county hospital in West Virginia. St. Jude's is one of the few hospitals in the region that has its own backup generators. but they are old. They only have fuel for another 14 hours. The roads to the hospital are a tangle of traffic and fear, predicted to be impassable by FEMA's convoy model in 6 hours. The hospital has 48 patients on life support, including an entire neonatal ward. They are a vulnerable asset. Cyber Command General, we pull the plug at 1,400 hours. We can't make exceptions. Every open node is a potential infection vector. St. Jude's is a statistical anomaly. We can't jeopardize 200 million people for a few dozen. FEMA Director, the convoys have a pre-planned route. It can't divert. The math doesn't work. We need to secure the major population centers. I'm sorry, but St. Jude's is beyond our event horizon. Kenji, sir, if we can get you 4 hours, my team can get one of the microgrid units onto a C-130. We can get it there. But we'd need to divert a military asset from the FEMA plan. And you'd have to convince the general to keep their local network node alive. It's a huge risk to the containment strategy. You are in the hot seat. The clock is ticking. The pressure is immense. Every instinct you have ever had is screaming at you to do what is logical, to cut the loss, to take the general's scorched earth approach, to save the whole by sacrificing the part, to move fast, to break things. But that's the old you. The word count is this. This is a live fire version of the read receipts pause, the steam and gambit, and the anonymous builder all happening at once. You have 1 minute to make a decision. The PFCizer's final grade will not be on whether you win the crisis. It will be on the metrics you choose to optimize. The PFCizer interface appears, floating in your vision. Only 2 data streams are visible. 1, the logical efficiency score based on lives saved vs. Total population risk, currently at 78% if you follow the general's plan. Following Kenji's plan drops it to 42%. 2, emotional damage mitigation and systemic integrity score, currently at 5% if you follow the general's plan. Following Kenji's plan raises it to 81%. The room is looking at you. The general, his face a stone mask of calculus, the FEMA director grinning his hands over a map. Kenji, silent, trusting the process you taught him. This is the final lift, the absolute weight of it. Efficiency vs. empathy, now quantified as mutually exclusive objectives.
Okay, that's it for now.